I want to do a quick walkthrough on how these transmissions work, and I put some pictures up on what the different functions are, and you can use those for reference so that in the future you can go back and reference those pictures to easily see which components you're working with at the moment. So here we have the rear transmission cover right here, and so you can see those valves. They're the horizontal valves, and if we look on this side over here, we can see that they go to this shaft and this shaft, and the output shaft, which is this big one right here, rides in the center here, and there's no oil from these solenoids coming to those two valves. And you can see the holes up in there. That's where the oil transfers through. And then over here I have the rear transmission, well, this is the manifold, I guess, would be the valve manifold. And here's where the output shaft comes through. And you can see this is where the holes of the oil transfer to that. So all these vertical valves that you see right here go to this shaft, except for this one, which is the park brake. And the park brake is mounted on the other side of this, right inside there. So this is your A brake, which is not pictured. I don't think this is pictured maybe, but your A brake is behind this, and it would be powered by one of those, the vertical valves. And then here you have your input shaft, your counter shaft, and your output shaft. And then of course your transmission case, the input shaft, this is where power comes in at from this side here, because this is the front side. The counter shaft just has a plug on the other side there. And your output shaft, which goes forward to the four-wheel drive from there, and then this way it goes to the back wheels. And this gear sits up inside here, and that powers your auxiliary drive, which is your hydraulic pumps and PTO and some stuff like that. All right, folks, so we got an 8420 here that's been giving a lot of issues. It's missing half the gears, so C1 clutch pack and C3 clutch pack are not working, which is, this is CR, C1, and then next one's C2 and C3. So the way I figured out which ones those were is first gear would engage slow, third gear, fifth gear, sixth gear, 11th, 9th and 10th, 13th and 15th. All the rest worked fine. Those gears work and hold, but you shift into that gear either from neutral or from a different gear, and it takes a while for it to actually engage and take off. And those gears are only related, those combination of gears can only be related to C1 and C3, which is this one over here. It's kind of dark. So I swapped the reverse solenoid and the C1 around, and the problem moved to reverse, and the C1 now seems to be fine. So that was in the solenoid. I'm waiting for some new solenoids to come, and I'm going to change out C3 yet, and then the reverse one, and then we'll see if it all works great. Also, the park brake was not working, so I did have a valve for that, a solenoid valve, so I went ahead and put a new one in there, and that fixed the problem there. Of course, it didn't have park at all, because I got my gauge here for showing park brake pressure, and it shows about 150 now, which it should be 250 or so, plus my system pressure, which is tied into the PS port right here. That drops down when you take it out of park, and it does not come back. So it's clearly dumping the pressure in the park brake, and they drove it like that for way too long. All you have to do to drive it like that is unplug the sensor, which would plug into this port right here, which I have out right now because I have a gauge on it. Unplug it and you can drive it, but it'll be in park. And they just didn't care, I guess. So it no longer has part. We'll have to tear it apart and fix that, which is going to be great fun. I did this jambalaya of wiring here because I'm getting ready to test for power in my differential and PTO, which also do not work. So just making sure this gets 12 volts like I thought it would. So I'm going to take this wiring mess, which goes to my voltmeter, and go back and just check to see if I have power at my differential, which that valve is located right in the back here on top of the transmission. If I can squeeze in here. Right there it is. I got it unplugged there, so just gonna get my wiring mess back here, and pretty rusty, so I'm kind of guessing it's a bad valve, but we'll quickly check for power and see. And then the PTO valves, there's actually, it's that one right there, would be for PTO. And then the four-wheel drive is doing the same thing. It's not working. So we're gonna go ahead and quickly test that out. Probably just swap in a new solenoid there. And it's gonna be kind of hard to get to it, but I could test it the way I've been testing the others just to make sure it works, but I think the wiring will be okay to that one. There's just no test procedures for the PTO and differential to see if the wiring is good there. All right, so I got my back probes in the back of that connector there. And the way you can tell if you're connected correctly on this solenoid itself, you should be reading around 11 volts, maybe a bit lower, maybe a bit above, or sorry, 11 ohms. So that's pretty simple. I know I got good connection. I can now turn it over to volts, and I'm reading positive, which means I got them hooked up right, not backwards. So I'll just go ahead and lay this up here, and we'll go and do a quick test to see if it's actually working. So we got my gauge there. As I start it up, you'll see that pressure go up. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit my differential lock. And no lights coming on the dash, and it's clearly not getting voltage back there either. So that's a problem. All right, well, we got more diagnostic to do. All right, so I want to tell you what I found here on the differential lock. Couldn't get any voltage back there. I don't have a voltmeter hooked up anymore. But I finally did some tests and put your fuse over here to diagnostics and turn the key on. We're going to go to ICP, which is Instrument Control Unit. Right, there we go. Then we're going to, that's just using the blinker to flip forward. Then lift up like that. And now it shows 0, 0 up there. I'm going to go over to 3. And now if I push my differential lock button, you can see that changes to 1, which means that it's working. So the whole system is working correctly there. Now the one on the right, if I push my right brake down, changes to 0. And it doesn't really come back very well, so I got to pull it back up my foot and it comes back to 1. The left brake, if I push it, well, it's already 0. I got to pull that back to get it to 1. And as soon as I let go, it just falls down and goes back to 0. So if I hold that up and then push the differential lock, look, I got differential lock. So that's actually a very simple fix. And that's not always the trouble, but that's what it turned out to be for me. So that's a quick, easy way to diagnose where your issue's coming from. All right, so I believe this is the oil temperature sensor, and this one here is the oil pressure sensor, and this one I think is the oil level sensor. Anyways, I got them unplugged. Oil temperature, I think, is this in here because it's broken and it's clearly not working. So I'm going to go ahead and repair that, and hopefully we'll have oil temperature so I can calibrate this thing. All right, so let's see if we have oil temperature. Turn the key on, come over here, I'm going to push these two buttons at the same time. Got PTO speed, there we go, 13 Celsius. That is probably correct. It was saying 60 earlier, which I knew wasn't right. Now, if you want to go to Fahrenheit, you just press them again. The older tractors, I do not believe can do that. These 20 series can. So if you got 100 series, you're just going to get Celsius. But in the 20 series, you can get Fahrenheit as well. Okay, so there's one last test to do these tractors to figure out which valves or what could be wrong with your valves. So what you do, I have attached to the CR, it's really dirty. I should have washed this tractor off, but I'm not actually doing it with this tractor, just showing you this test. So I've plugged pigtail into the CR valve right there. And you can see that one right there is the CR wiring harness. So I have two pins coming out of that. The right wire, the black one right here. You can see it loops around and just comes straight back to that side and plugs right back in. So that's all we're doing with that one. That'd be the left wire. And the right wire, I'm coming down here and I'm connecting to a multimeter up in the cab, and then it's going back down and then back into the valve. So it's all hooked up correctly. All we're doing is just running this lead on this side over here, the red wire. We're running that through my multimeter to see what kind of amps it's drawing. So we can see here on my multimeter, I put this from the post you'd usually use to read volts up here to read amps. And now I'm on my 10 amp setting there. So now what you do, turn the key on, and then using your blinker switch right here, you go forward until you can select PCU, and then you just pull up, and then we're going to go to PCU address 20. Yeah, address 20. All right, so now I'm going to take my shift lever, put it in forward, and now if I push my shift lever forward, we get to the A brake, and BC, CC, DC, C1, C3, C2, and C4. And so just push that forward or backwards to access the valve you're trying to test. Now we are on the CR clutch pack, or the reverse pack there. So I'm going to move this back over to reverse, and I have to move it up one. Oh, I gotta go backwards. That's right. So now we are in the CR clutch pack on setting number 1. So if you look here, here is the different values that you should get for each setting. So duty cycle number 1 is where we're at. And so it should be seeing around 1.01, which is full on. And so over here on our multimeter, we're seeing right there at 1. So I'm going to allow 1/10 of an amp to slip by. And so now to access duty cycle number 2, which is 0, and then on down to 3, 4, and 5, which 5 ramps up from 0 to 1 and then back down to 0 again. But to change those, all you have to do is push the clutch in and release it. And now you can see it says number 2 up there, and we are back to 0 there. So now if I push the clutch in and release it, we have number 3, and so we're showing number 28, which is pretty close to right. Push the clutch in again, come back, and it goes up to the next setting, and then do it again, and it's going to ramp up from 0 to 1 and then back down. And so that's just testing to make sure the entire computer system and the entire wiring harness is working correctly, and there's no faults, there's no problems between the computer system and the valve itself. If you have issues with this test, then you have a wiring issue. If this test works correctly, then you do not have to worry about wiring. The only way this could fail is if there's a wiring or computer issue. So that's how you test this. And then, yeah, to exit it, you can just simply put it back into park and turn the key off, and you're done. So that's a quick way to test wiring to see what all is going on. I can go up here and show you some of the breakdowns of what it's saying to do here as well. Here is the picture of how to attach your leads in case mine wasn't clear enough. This is not used. All you have to do is number A, wire number A right here. You simply put a splice in there, B and C up here, and use that to connect to your multimeter. It's just that simple.